Hello, Matt. Welcome to our 15th video. You know, when we started out here, I thought that teaching you the basics was going to take probably 2 months, and with this 15th video, it's now been 3. And so this is going to be the last video of this series. I think that we've covered so much that it's not a stretch to say that we've covered all the basics, that the basics are done. And we're now at the point where after this video, I think we've covered so much that when Dwayne and I talk about music, you know what we're talking about. You know our language. There's nothing else that you need to be able to talk music with us and with other musicians, and that was the first goal of this whole video series. All right? This one I think is going to be a long one. I couldn't figure out how to cut it into 2, so I'm just going to tear through it, and you don't have to watch it all in one sitting if you don't mind. That's kind of the glory of this type of technology. So, without further ado, if I were to say there is a song that has 3 chords, those 3 chords are D, A, and G. What key do you think that song is in? And you might go in your mind and you might think back to some of the music that we've done together, and you might think about as Pepper Spray. You might think about Big Top. And so you might answer, I think it's D. And that's a good answer. If I see D, A, and G together in a song, it's likely going to be in the key of D. But here's another possibility. What if I play this for you? All right? That's in the key of A. So that chord progression is pretty common in D, but it's also pretty common in A. And if people were to ask me, well, is there a way to make that in the key of G? I would say probably not. Probably not. This lesson is going to be about modes. Okay, if you recall, a long time ago, it's been a lot of lessons, we were talking about the major scale, and we talked about the major scale is the type of scale you get when you play all the white keys when you start on this one, and this one is C. So, in the key of C, you would get whole key, whole, half, whole, half. That's 1 octave. Okay, I'm going to write that down. Let's infer the key, because the key is whatever you're in, and I'm just going to say whole, half, whole, half. Okay? Now, we also said that the natural minor is the same pattern, but you have to start on the A key. So for A, you would get whole, half, half, whole. All right? Now, I'm going to write that down. Let's see. Give some room here. I'm going to say right about here. And I'm going to say that the A pattern is going to be whole, half, whole, half, whole. All right? We also said that in the key of C, that this was going to be a pattern in the scale that is the 1, the major 2, the major 3, the perfect 4, the perfect 5, the major 6, and the major 7. And we said that in the A, in the natural minor, that this corresponds to the 1, the major 2, the flat 3 or the minor 3, the 4, perfect 4, the perfect 5, the flat 6, and the flat 7. Okay? And that works whether you start, so for the major scale, you start on C and play all the white keys. For the minor scale, you start on A and you play all the white keys. And you get these patterns. But these patterns, this pattern comes directly from the math of just looking at the scale starting on A or starting on C. Okay? This math also comes out of that. It comes out because this key is not 2 full step jumps. It's a full step and a half step. So that's the flat 3. Okay? Now, all the modes are basically the same idea starting on different keys. You don't just have to start on C, and you don't just have to start on A. You could also, for example, start on D. What happens if you start on D? Well, you get whole, half, whole, 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 half, whole. Okay? What would that come out to? Well, that would come out to the 1. The whole step will go to the 2. The half step will go to the flat 3. The whole step will go to the 4. Whole step to the 5. Whole step to the major 6. And then a half step to the flat 7. What's the difference between starting on a D and starting on C when it comes to this pattern? This pattern is only going to be different by the major third becomes the flat third. The major 7 becomes the flat 7. Wait, isn't this exactly the same as the natural minor? No. The flat third is there. The flat 7 is there, but the natural minor has a flat 6. So the difference between this version and this version is whether you use the major 6th or the minor 6. Okay. Let's continue this on. What happens if you start on the E? If you start on the E, right off the bat you get a half step. Half, whole, 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 half, whole, whole. What does that look like? It's the 1. Now it's the flat 2. It's the flat 3. Then the 4. Then the 5. Then the flat 6. And then the flat 7. The only difference between this and the natural minor, it's got the flat 7, flat 6, just like that. Flat 3 is the flat 2. So this one is going to sound a lot like the natural minor, but it has an additional flat 2 in it. Okay? What's next? Well, what happens if we start on F? Let's go back over here to start on F, okay? So that it fits in the octave. But on an F, you start out with whole, whole, whole. You do 3 wholes in a row. 3 whole steps in a row. Then a half, then whole, whole, and then a half. What does that look like? Well, it's got the first 3 look a lot like the major scale. It's going to be the 1, it's going to be the 2, and it's going to be the 3. The problem is this whole step right here. So this is the 1, the 2, the 3, but it's a whole step, not a half step, to that 4th. So that is not going to be the 4. The 4 would have been the B flat, but the 4 here is going to be B natural. We're going to call that the sharp 4. Then whole, whole, 6, and 7. Okay? 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, and 7. All right? Well, that's interesting. Everything else, the only modifier we've had, the only accidental we've had in any of these scales is a flat sign. And this is the first time we've seen a sharp sign. But it is unavoidable because that 4th degree is sharper than it is for a perfect 4th. Okay? That's F. What happens if we start it at G? If we start at G, we get whole, whole, half. Whole, whole, half, whole. That corresponds to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7. The only difference between this starting on G and starting on C is that in G you've got the flat 7, that F. See that? Whereas if you start in C, the 7th is a major 7th. If you start in G, the 7th is a minor 7th. That's the only difference between that and the major. All right. I see that we've now done 6 of these. I left too much space here. I wish I could move that up, but oh well. Last one. What happens if we start on the B? If you start on the B, you start right off the bat with a half step. Then you do whole, whole, half, whole, whole, whole. Okay? That scale is going to be the 1, the flat 2, the flat 3, the 4, the flat 5, the flat 6, and the flat 7. Okay? What do we call these modes? They are modes, by the way. Okay? In other words, if I play only the white keys, you might assume that I'm playing in C major, but that's not necessarily true. I could be playing in D or E or F or G or A or B. We don't know. There is a subjective home. And if that home is C, then yes, we are playing the C major scale. But if that subjective home is something else, we are playing one of the other modes of the major scale. First, let's name the 2 that we've talked about before, the major scale and the natural minor scale. Those have a mode name of, for C, it would be Ionian. For A, that is called Aeolian. Aeolian. I might be spelling that wrong. If I am, I apologize. But the major scale is called Ionian, and the natural minor scale is called Aeolian. Okay? What do we call these other ones? I'm just going to list them out. For D, that's called Dorian. For E, that's called Phrygian. For F, that's called Lydian. For G, that's called Mixolydian. I think I did misspell that. I think that is an Mixolydian. Mixolydian. Since I've got the extra space, why not just write it correctly again? Okay? And finally, B is going to be Locrian. Now, we can do, with these modes, we can do everything that we've talked about doing with the major scale. One of the things we did in the major scale was we mapped out the triads, and we said that in C major it would be a major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished, right? And we can do that with all of these modes. They map the same. So for Dorian, in D, we would start and it would be minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished, major. Okay? It's the same chords as in C. It's just this one is now D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, and C major. E Phrygian would start out here, and now we're in the minor, major, major, minor, diminished, major, minor. Lydian. Major, major, minor, diminished, major, minor, minor. Mixolydian would start out and it would be major, minor, diminished, major, minor, minor, major. Okay? Again, those chords are going to be the same ones that you see in C Ionian. It's the same triads. We're just doing them in a different order. So G Mixolydian is going to be G major, A minor, B diminished, C major, D minor, E minor, and F major. It's just that the flat 7 of G is going to be the F, and so this is going to be the major version of the F chord. Okay? Okay, Matt, I'm going to be demonstrating the modes now, and I'm going to be doing that by playing scales on the guitar. I'm going to start in a C major scale, and if you remember the C major scale, you'll start on the C note, and this is the way we did it. We did Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Now, home bass on a C major scale is going to be C major. So, and if I'm going to be demonstrating the difference between that and Mixolydian, Mixolydian is going to use the flat 7. What is that scale going to look like? It's going to look like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Monday, Wednesday. Not Tuesday, Wednesday. So it's going to look like this. Hear the difference? Okay? It's still a C major for the bass, for the background. All right? Now that is sort of demonstrating the mechanics of it, the math of it, but if I'm going to demonstrate what the sound of it is and the difference between that and what it's good for, I'm going to need to do something else. I want you to keep in your mind that home bass of that C major chord, and I want to do that playing that, and the way I'm going to do that is with the aid of a freeze pedal. This freeze pedal is good for keeping a drone. Okay, I'm going to hook that up and I'm going to show it to you. All right, Matt, the freeze pedal is hooked up. There's nothing different if I don't trigger it. All right, just sounds like a normal little guitar, but if I do that, click on the stomp box, and then stop playing, you can still hear the drone going. You hear that? That's a little quiet. I'm going to try a little louder now. All right, hear that? That's major. Now let's try Mixolydian. See, if with the flat 7 I can do that low octave too down here. That's a B flat up to the C. That's a B flat. This is a B natural. And now go down to the other B natural. Mixolydian. Can you hear the difference? Can you hear the difference between that Mixolydian 7th down here and the major 7th here? All right? I want you to keep that in mind. What about doing another mode? Well, another mode that is really close to the major scale. Another mode is the Lydian scale. What does that sound like? Let's try it. Let's try it in another C major. All right, you hear that drone going? That's home bass. This is the Mixolydian scale. There's a famous show that uses a Mixolydian triad in its opening. Let me play that for you. Hear that? This note is what makes it Lydian. And it's also called the Lydian note. That sharp 4 is the Lydian note. When you practice ear training and you try to recognize it, try and think of, is that the Simpsons note? Because if it's the Simpsons note, this is a Lydian scale, and that is, it's in the Lydian mode, okay? Pretty cool, huh? All right. What else can we do? I'm going to keep this drone going and see what other modes we can do. We've already done Ionian, we've already done Mixolydian, and we've already done Lydian. Well, that means, unfortunately, we are out of the major modes. The major modes are defined as who's got the major third. Any mode that has a flat 3, it's hard to hear that because it's the freeze pedal has got a major third in it. So I'm playing a minor third at the same time as a major third. That's not going to work. So I'm going to take away the drone for a second. I'm going to instead play a C power chord. A C power chord has no major or minor third. Let's try that. Now let's try a minor. It should sound like this. I'm sorry that was wrong. All right, let's start on the C. Play a natural minor. That's the Aeolian. All right, we've already known that. That's natural minor. How do we make that into something else? Well, Dorian is really close by. The only difference between Aeolian and Dorian is the 6th, the flat 6 in the natural to the major 6 in Dorian. Back to the natural minor. Natural, Dorian, natural, and Dorian. Real subtle difference there, okay? We've already done Dorian, we've done Aeolian. Let's finish it off. Let's do Phrygian. The thing with a Phrygian note is that flat 2 right off the bat. That Jaws kind of sound. Sorry, let's get that out of your way so you can see what I'm doing here. I'm playing the Phrygian note at the top octave so it doesn't clash with some of the drone that I've got on. And that's going to be the Phrygian sound right there. Yeah, sorry. Okay, the Phrygian sound is really defined by that flat 2. And that flat 2, by the way, is called the Phrygian note. All right, lastly, now we've been prejudiced against the Locrian scale for a long time, the Locrian mode, and we shouldn't be. It does have its uses. Let's try and play that. That's going to be the flat 2, the flat 3, then the flat 5. That's going to be the big difference. So it's going to sound a lot like the Phrygian scale. And it's that note that's going to be different. No. Sorry, got that wrong. All right. I gotta remember it. And now you know what's wrong with this drone and why it's not really coming through? I just figured it out. I told you I was doing a C power chord, and that was the drone. But guess what? A power chord has the 5th. We can't have a 5th in Locrian. So let's take that away, and instead we can do just a C note. That'd be okay. We could also do the flat 5. Cool. All right, so some final thoughts about modes. When we did our last retreat, we played the Dice of Destiny, and I sort of treated modes as a way to classify chord progressions. And that might be true, but it might not be the best way of looking at it. I think the best way to learn modes when you're learning them is to play a drone and play those notes on top of the drone. Get to learn with your ears the differences between those notes. The difference between the major and the Lydian is that Lydian note. Listen for that Lydian note. If you hear that Lydian note, that tells you, I heard the Simpsons note. We're in Lydian here. Then it gets much easier to play something by ear because now you're hearing details that you didn't know about before. You hear a note and you're like, oh, if that's the Lydian note, and then you compute what the Lydian note is, you know exactly what note to play on the guitar. All right. And so that is probably the best way to learn modes. I think that when people talk about classical music in particular, when they're talking about the mode, they're talking about spending time in that mode, but then you change over to a different mode. It's almost like you stay in that chord for a long time. Whereas when we were together the last time, my understanding of modes, which was I think was wrong, was to say that that chord progressions can be classified as in a mode. And it's not exactly untrue. When I played that Little Susie intro and I was playing A in the key of A and I was playing the D and the G, well, that's a very common chord progression in rock and roll. And it turns out if you sing those mixolydian notes, you're right. The chord progression is going to be the 1, the flat 7, and the 4. And I think you look at that and you're like, well, so in Mixolydian, those are all chords in Mixolydian, and you sing those notes, they work. And in blues rock in particular, those work pretty well. We talked about blues rock, and I said the bluesiness of it comes from playing the major chord, but playing that minor third, and the pentatonic scale, the minor pentatonic scale that we were using in blues rock. That minor pentatonic has the flat 3 and the flat 7, so it makes sense to play a scale that has the flat 7 in it. It gets you halfway there anyway. So Mixolydian, you hear a lot of blues rock in Mixolydian. Sweet Child of Mine, check that out. The verses, the chord progression is that flat 7 and 4, the 1 flat 7 4. So you can say that there is a Mixolydian chord progression, but I think it's more correct to say that these series of notes, this part of the passage, it has a drone that clues you in that home bass is now here. And with that home bass here, you get these progression of notes. And for this section of the song, we get the Mixolydian sound. We get it in a mode of Mixolydian, and that's why they use the term mode, because this mode, we're going to stay here for a while. We're going to stay in the same key. We're still in C major, but when we get to the dominant chord, that G, then we're suddenly in a Mixolydian mode of it. Go into A minor. You could make the conclusion that if you're in the key of C and you're in the key of A minor, you're in the same key. It's the same chords. It's just, what is that home bass? Is that home bass going to be A and playing the natural minor, or is it going to be C playing the major scale? And you can make an argument that you're in the key of C major and you suddenly go into A minor. You're still in the key of C major. You're just in the Aeolian mode. Okay? I realize that was confusing. Modes are confusing to us because we're not music majors. And so I really wanted to give you this as a basic so that we can use it to communicate. But at the same time, I didn't study classical music, and these modes came out of classical music. Another thought, though, you also have modes of other scales. So I mentioned briefly, when we were talking about the natural minor scale, I mentioned there's another minor scale that some musicians consider the minor scale, which is called the harmonic minor. And the harmonic minor had a jump of not just a whole or a half step, but a minor third up there at the end. And they used that to get the leading tone, the major seventh inside of a minor scale. When my son Nathan plays the piano, they say play a minor scale. He plays the harmonic minor, not the natural minor, because of that trait. They really find that major seventh to be useful in a minor scale. There are modes of the harmonic minor scale, and one of those modes is the Phrygian dominant scale that I really like. And you hear the Phrygian dominant scale quite a bit in metal and other places. So Phrygian dominant. When we do Why Did Sean Connery Try to Kill Me? The Phrygian dominant scale is what I envision a guitar solo during the verse to sound like. Now there is no solo during the verse of that song, but in my mind there could be, and that's what I would choose to do. It's in the major chord, so it's in the E major, right? And the chord progression in that verse goes from E major to F major, and that is very common in the Phrygian dominant scale. Well, the Phrygian dominant scale is a mode of the harmonic minor. And just like the major scale has 7 modes, guess what? Harmonic minor has 7 also. Does that mean we should write a song in each? Probably not. It'd be fun to do. It'd be a fun challenge, right? Maybe. It's a way to be original. It's a way to stand out in the crowd. Harmonic minor. I think the modes of the harmonic minor are probably best described in the song Hava Nagila. Listen to that, and you're going to hear that it switches modes. I think it starts in Phrygian dominant and moves on to the harmonic minor, and you hear the shift as a key change. It's not a key change; it's a mode change. All right. Okay. Well, here we are. 15 lessons. Hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's been fun. I hope you've learned something. And I hope that it helps you when you want to play guitar in the church. You've got nothing to hide. We didn't study music growing up. Our knowledge is more, we picked it up ourselves. Nobody taught this to us. I did have guitar lessons and I did have piano lessons, but not very many. They did not teach me this stuff. And when I saw my kids getting taught this stuff, I got really excited. Like it got me going. I was like, I want to play music now. Ideally, this should open up your possibilities. You should see that there's 7 modes. There's a Locrian mode. That's a possibility. Don't think of that as another homework assignment that you need to learn. No, it's a possibility. Music theory is a way of looking at music, a way of thinking about music, and if it doesn't open up possibilities for you, then it's not really useful. I hope it can help you learn to listen to music better. You can listen to some of these patterns and go, I've heard that before. But if it's not fun, what are we doing this for? It needs to be fun. And I hope that it is. Because when my brother and I, when we go down the rabbit hole of YouTube channels, we have a lot of fun. Okay? All right. Hope you had fun. That's it. Thanks. Bye.